She jumped from the third-floor window at exactly 3 a.m., when the world hung suspended between yesterday's bruises and tomorrow's promises. Elena didn't scream. She'd learned years ago that screaming only made it worse. The night air rushed past her face, cold and clean, so different from the suffocating atmosphere of the bedroom she was leaving behind. 3 stories down, the garden waited with its unforgiving stone pathway, and for one crystalline moment, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in 7 years. Freedom, even if it only lasted the length of a fall. But she never hit the ground. Arms caught her mid-air, impossibly strong, impossibly gentle. The impact she'd braced for never came. Instead, she found herself cradled against a chest that didn't breathe, held by someone who moved through the darkness like he was part of it. Elena's eyes flew open. The face above her could have been carved from moonlight and shadows, sharp cheekbones, pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and eyes the color of midnight storms, ancient and knowing. He looked down at her with an expression she couldn't name, something between concern and fury, though the fury didn't seem directed at her. "You're safe now," he said, his voice low and steady, like distant thunder. "I won't let you fall." Elena's mind couldn't process what was happening. The adrenaline of escape, the shock of being caught, the impossible reality of floating 3 feet above the ground in the arms of a stranger who appeared from nowhere. Her body decided for her, shaking violently, teeth chattering despite the mild spring night. "Please," she whispered, and even that small word hurt coming out. Her throat was raw from earlier, from the argument that had finally pushed her to the window. "Please don't take me back inside." The stranger's arms tightened fractionally around her, protective rather than possessive. "I'm not taking you back to him, ever." How did he know there was a him? How did he know anything? Elena's apartment window still hung open above them, dark and accusing. Any moment, Marcus would wake up, would realize she was gone, would come looking. "We need to go," the stranger said, as if reading her thoughts. "He'll search for you, and I'd rather not paint your garden with his blood tonight. Though I'm tempted." He moved then, and Elena's stomach dropped as the ground fell away beneath them. They weren't walking. They were flying, or something close to it. The stranger moved with inhuman speed, carrying her through the sleeping city as easily as if she weighed nothing. Buildings blurred past. Streetlights became streaks of gold. The cool night air dried the tears on Elena's cheeks. Tears she hadn't realized she was crying. "What are you?" she managed to ask, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Morpheus Nightfall," he replied, which wasn't really an answer. "And you are far braver than you know, little one, little one." Marcus used to call her that in the beginning, before little one became stupid, became worthlesses, became worse things. Things she tried not to remember. But somehow, when Morpheus said it, the words carried no venom. Only something that felt almost like gentleness. They left the city behind, moving into the hills beyond where Elena had never ventured. Marcus didn't like her going places without him, and over time, her world had shrunk to the size of their apartment, then their bedroom, then finally, just the corner where she'd learned to make herself small. The landscape changed. Manicured suburbs gave way to wild forests, and then, rising from the darkness like something from a fever dream, a structure that could only be called a castle, all dark stone and soaring towers, windows glowing with warm light that seemed impossible given the hour. Morpheus landed on a balcony with the grace of a cat, finally setting Elena on her feet. Her legs barely held her. She was wearing only her nightgown, thin cotton that offered no protection from the night or from scrutiny. Her arms were mottled with bruises in various stages of healing, a timeline of cruelty written on her skin, in purple and yellow and green. She tried to cover them instinctively, crossing her arms over her chest, making herself smaller. "Don't," Morpheus said quietly. "Don't hide what he did to you. Not here, not from me." His eyes tracked over her injuries with an expression that made Elena's breath catch. It wasn't pity. It was rage, cold and controlled, the kind of anger that didn't explode but instead froze everything it touched. "How long?" he asked. Elena knew what he meant. 7 years. Since we married. 7 years. He repeated the words like they were in a foreign language he was trying to understand. 7 years of this. And no one helped you? "I stopped asking for help after the first year," Elena said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "People don't like to get involved in domestic matters." That's what the police called it. A domestic matter. Morpheus made a sound low in his throat, something between a growl and a sigh. Humans have such interesting definitions of honor. "Come. You're freezing, and those wounds need tending." He guided her inside with a hand that hovered near her lower back but didn't quite touch, respecting her space in a way that felt foreign and precious. The interior of the castle matched its exterior, all dark wood and stone, but softened with tapestries and deep jewel tones and furniture that looked ancient and comfortable. Candles burned in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I don't understand," Elena said, stopping in what appeared to be an entrance hall with a ceiling that soared 3 stories high. "Why did you catch me? How were you even there?" Morpheus turned to face her, and in the candlelight she could see him more clearly. He was tall, impossibly tall, with hair so dark it seemed to absorb light. He wore all black, simple clothes that somehow looked elegant on his frame. And his eyes. They held centuries in their depths, she could feel it, an agelessness that made her feel like a mayfly in comparison. "I was hunting," he said simply. "I smelled blood on the wind, your blood, and fear, sharp and bitter. I followed the scent to your window." He paused, something flickering across his face. "I've existed for 9 centuries, Elena. I've witnessed wars, plagues, the rise and fall of empires. But I've never seen anything quite as brave as a woman choosing to fall rather than endure one more moment of captivity." "You know my name," she whispered. "You've been saying it. In your sleep, in your fear, in your prayers to whatever gods might listen. You've been calling out your own name, reminding yourself you still exist." He moved toward a doorway, gesturing for her to follow. "Come, let's remind you of all the other things you are, besides his victim." The room Morpheus led her to could have fit Elena's entire apartment inside it, twice over. A fire burned in a fireplace large enough to stand in, casting warm amber light across stone walls hung with artwork that looked priceless. The bed dominated the space, a 4-poster creation draped in deep burgundy velvet that looked like it belonged in a museum. Or a castle. Which, Alana supposed, it did. "This is too much," she said, hovering near the doorway. Her bare feet were dirty from the garden, from the balcony, and she was terrified to step onto the plush carpet that probably cost more than everything she'd ever owned. "It's a guest room," Morpheus replied, moving to the bed to turn down the covers. "I have 17 of them. This one hasn't been used in 40 years. 40 years. He said it so casually, like everyone measured time in decades instead of days. Elena wrapped her arms tighter around herself, suddenly aware of how she must look. Bruised, dirty, wearing a nightgown with a torn sleeve from where Marcus had grabbed her earlier. A charity case. A burden. "I should go," she heard herself say. "I shouldn't have. I mean, you've been very kind, but I can't impose. I'll find somewhere. A shelter, maybe, or—" "Elena." He said her name like it was something precious. "Look at me." She did, though it cost her. Years of learning not to make eye contact, not to challenge, not to draw attention. But Morpheus wasn't Marcus. His eyes held no threat, no manipulation. Only an intensity that made her feel seen in a way she'd almost forgotten. "You're not going anywhere tonight," he said. You're injured, exhausted, and in shock. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, if you still want to leave, I'll help you find whatever you need. But tonight, you rest. Here. Safe. Safe. The word felt foreign. What do you want from me? Elena asked, because in her experience, kindness always came with a price tag attached. Morpheus tilted his head, studying her with those ancient eyes. Want from you? Nothing. Though I am curious about something. He crossed the room to a cabinet, pulling out what looked like a first aid kit, surprisingly modern against the medieval aesthetic. When you jumped, did you know I would catch you? The question stopped Elena's spiraling thoughts. Had she known? I don't know. I just knew I couldn't stay in that room one more second, and when I went to the window I felt something, like the air was different. Charged, maybe? I thought I was imagining it. You weren't. Morpheus gestured to a chair near the fire. Sit. Let me tend those wounds. Elena sat, mostly because her legs were giving out anyway. Morpheus knelt in front of her, which seemed wrong. He was clearly... what? A king? A lord? Something powerful and ancient, and he was kneeling to care for her injuries. His hands were cool against her skin, as he carefully cleaned the scrapes on her arms, the cut on her cheekbone from where Marcus's ring had split the skin. His touch was clinical, but not cold. Efficient, but not rough. Nothing like the hands she'd learned to flinch from. You sensed me, Morpheus said as he worked. My presence. Most humans can't. They walk past my kind every day and never feel the difference between us and them. Your kind, Elena repeated. You're not human. No. I'm vampire, though we prefer the term Nightborn. Human legends got some things right and many things absurdly wrong. He applied salve to her injuries, something that smelled of herbs and made the pain recede almost instantly. We're not undead. We're not cursed. We're simply other. Parallel to humanity, feeding on blood to survive, yes, but hardly the monsters your stories paint us as. Elena knew she should be terrified. A vampire. She was sitting in a vampire's castle, letting him touch her, tend her wounds, but fear required energy she didn't have, and somehow Morpheus felt less dangerous than the human man she'd married. Why do you live alone? She asked. A castle this big, surely you must have what? A coven? A family? My court disbanded 70 years ago after a territorial dispute I had no interest in continuing. He moved to examine her wrists, where rope burns marked the skin. His jaw tightened. I found I preferred solitude to politics. Though I maintain connections to my kind, keep aware of our world. He fell silent, working on her injuries with a focus that felt almost meditative. Elena watched him, this impossible creature who'd appeared from nowhere to catch her fall. His features were sharp but not harsh, beautiful, in a way that didn't feel quite human. Timeless. The rope burns are recent, he said quietly. Tonight? Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus had decided she needed to be taught a lesson about arguing back, about having opinions, about being anything other than perfectly obedient. The lesson had involved the cord from the window blinds, and a lot of words about how she belonged to him, how she'd never leave, how no one else would ever want someone as damaged as her. He told me I was worthless, Elena said, the words coming out before she could stop them. That I was lucky he put up with me, that no one else would ever. Her voice broke. Morpheus's hands stilled. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge that could cut glass. He lied. Men like him always do. They break you down with words because it's easier than accepting their own emptiness. They make you believe you're small because your strength terrifies them. He finished with her wrists, wrapping them gently in soft bandages. You jumped from a third-story window rather than spend one more night in his presence. Does that sound like weakness to you? Elena had never thought of it that way. The jump had felt like desperation, like failure, like the final proof that she couldn't survive her own life. But Morpheus made it sound almost like courage. I don't feel strong, she whispered. Strength isn't a feeling. It's a choice you make when every other option has been exhausted. Morpheus stood, offering her his hand. Come, you need rest. Real rest. The kind that comes without fear of being woken by fists or fury. Elena took his hand, let him guide her to the massive bed. The sheets were soft as clouds, the mattress perfectly firm. Morpheus pulled the covers up to her chin with surprising gentleness. Sleep, he said. I'll be nearby. If you need anything, call out. I'll hear you. Even if I whisper, even if you think it, he replied with a small smile that transformed his face from beautiful to breathtaking. Vampire senses. We hear heartbeats from 3 rooms away. He moved toward the door, but Elena's voice stopped him. Morpheus? Thank you. For catching me. For all of this. He turned back, silhouetted against the doorway, a figure carved from shadows and starlight. Sleep well, Elena. Tomorrow, we begin teaching you what it means to be free. Morning came too quickly and too slowly at once. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud, her body aching in ways both familiar and new. For one blissful moment, she didn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then, it all crashed back. The jump. Morpheus. The castle. She sat up carefully, testing her body. The bruises still hurt, the cuts still stung, but the pain was muted, distant, like it belonged to someone else. The salve Morpheus had used must have been more than just herbs. Magic. Maybe. Was that real too? If vampires were real? Someone had left clothes on the chair near the fireplace, which had burned down to embers while she slept. A simple dress in deep forest green, soft and worn in a way that spoke of quality and age. Undergarments that looked like they'd been hastily purchased, tags still attached. She dressed slowly, her body protesting every movement. When she looked in the mirror above the wash basin, a stranger stared back. Her face was a roadmap of violence, the cut on her cheekbone, the bruise blooming across her jaw, the split in her lower lip. But her eyes looked different. Still frightened, yes, but with something else underneath. A spark she thought Marcus had extinguished years ago. The castle in daylight was less intimidating than it had been at night. Elena made her way through corridors lined with paintings and tapestries, following the scent of coffee and something baking that made her stomach growl. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been hungry. Marcus controlled meals, portioning out her food, using hunger as punishment when she displeased him. She found Morpheus in what could only be called a kitchen, though it looked like it belonged in a different century. Modern appliances sat alongside ancient stonework, creating a strange fusion of old and new. He stood at the counter, reading a newspaper, a cup of something dark and steaming beside him. He looked up when she entered, and his expression softened. You slept, he said, not quite a question. 7 hours. Your heartbeat finally steadied around dawn. You listened to my heartbeat all night? The thought should have been creepy. Somehow, it wasn't. Old habits, Morpheus replied. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn to monitor threats. Your heart was racing, even in sleep. Nightmares? Elena nodded. Always nightmares. Marcus lived in her dreams even when she managed to escape him in waking life. There's coffee, Morpheus said, gesturing to a pot that looked like it could caffeinate a small army. And I attempted bread. I'm told humans enjoy bread in the morning. though I haven't eaten food in several centuries. Despite everything, Elena felt her lips twitch. You bake bread? For me? I sent someone to the village at dawn to inquire about human breakfast preferences. They returned with 17 suggestions. I selected the one that seemed least likely to result in kitchen fires. He said it so seriously that Elena couldn't help it. She laughed. It came out rusty and broken, like an instrument that hadn't been played in years, but it was laughter nonetheless. Morpheus stared at her like she'd performed magic. I'd begun to think you couldn't, he said softly. Elena poured herself coffee, needing something to do with her hands. The normalcy of it felt surreal. Standing in a vampire's kitchen, drinking coffee, laughing at his attempts at baking. Yesterday she'd been planning her own death. Today she was. What? Safe? The bread was actually good, warm and crusty with butter that melted into golden pools. Elena ate without thinking, then looked up to find Morpheus watching her with an expression she couldn't name. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. You're beautiful when you're not terrified, he said simply. The words hit different than when Marcus used to call her beautiful. Marcus's compliments always came with conditions, with expectations, with the unspoken threat of what would happen if she failed to live up to them. Morpheus stated it like a fact, like commenting on the weather. Elena set down her bread. What happens now? I can't stay here forever. Marcus will look for me. He's not the kind of man who lets go of things he considers his property. You're not property, Morpheus said, an edge of steel in his voice. And yes, he'll look, which is why we need to discuss your options. He moved to sit across from her at the massive table. You can go to a shelter as you mentioned last night. I have connections in the city, can ensure you're placed somewhere safe, somewhere he won't find you easily. Or, he paused, or you can stay here, for as long as you need. The castle is warded against unwanted human visitors. He couldn't enter without my permission. You'd be completely safe. Elena's throat tightened. Why would you do that? You don't know me. I'm just some random woman who jumped from a window. You're not random, Morpheus said. And I know more than you think. When I caught you, I felt it. The thing you sensed in me, I sensed in you, too. You have a gift, Elena. A rare one. A gift? She almost laughed. I don't have any gifts. I'm not special. I'm not talented. I'm just. You can sense supernatural beings, Morpheus interrupted. Feel our presence even when we're hidden from normal human perception. It's extraordinarily rare. In 9 centuries, I've met perhaps 3 humans with that ability. Elena stared at him. That's not possible. I don't have powers or abilities or whatever. I'm completely ordinary. Are you? Think back. Have there been times when you knew something was off about a person, couldn't explain why? Moments when you avoided certain places or people because the air felt wrong? She wanted to deny it, but memories surfaced. The man at her wedding who'd made her skin crawl, who she'd later learned, was a serial killer. The building she'd refused to enter, the one that burned down a week later. The times she'd known, just known, that something dangerous lurked nearby. I thought everyone felt that, she whispered. Everyone doesn't. Most humans are blind to our world entirely. But you see the edges of it, feel the truth beneath the surface. Morpheus leaned forward. That ability could be developed, honed. You could learn to distinguish between different types of beings, sense their intentions. It's a gift that could keep you safe, help you rebuild a life where you're never vulnerable again. The offer hung between them, tempting and terrifying. Stay in a castle with a vampire who'd shown her more kindness in 12 hours than her husband had in 7 years. Learn to use an ability she didn't understand. Build something new from the broken pieces of her life. I want to show you something, Morpheus said, rising from the table. If you're feeling strong enough for a walk. Elena followed him through corridors that twisted and turned until she was thoroughly lost. The castle was larger than she'd realized. Room after room filled with centuries of collected treasures. They passed a library that made her breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books in every language imaginable. They passed an armory where weapons gleamed with deadly beauty. And finally, they reached a door carved with symbols Elena didn't recognize. Morpheus placed his hand against the wood, and she heard something click, multiple locks disengaging. "This room is warded," he explained, "protected by magic older than most human civilizations. What's inside is sensitive." The room beyond was circular, with windows that overlooked the forest. In the center sat a basin filled with water so clear it looked like liquid crystal. Around the room's perimeter, candles burned with flames that didn't flicker. "A scrying pool," Morpheus said. "Used to observe events happening elsewhere, to track magical signatures, to sense disturbances in the supernatural world." He gestured for her to approach. "Try something for me. Look into the water and tell me what you feel." Elena moved closer, uncertain. The water's surface was perfectly still, reflecting the ceiling above. She stared into it, expecting nothing. Instead, images began to form. Not clear pictures, but impressions, a sense of movement in the eastern forest. Something dark prowling near the castle's boundaries. And closer, much closer, a presence she recognized with sudden, visceral certainty. "There's someone at your gates," Elena said, the words coming without thought. Someone angry, demanding entry. She pressed her hand to her mouth. "He's human, but there's something else with him. Something that feels cold. Dead, but not vampire dead. Different." Morpheus had gone very still. "How many?" "3. No, 4. The human and 3. Others." She pulled back from the pool, her head spinning. "How did I know that?" "Your gift," Morpheus said quietly. He moved to the window, looking out toward the gates she couldn't see from this angle. "The human is your husband, I presume, and he's brought hired help. Wraiths, from your description, spirits bound to service, nasty things." Elena's heart stopped. "Marcus is here? Already? But how?" "Men like him don't sleep when their property escapes," Morpheus said, and though his tone was gentle, his expression was carved from ice. "He likely noticed your absence within minutes. Spent the night searching. And he has resources, it seems, if he's managed to bind wraiths to his cause." "You have to send me away," Elena said, backing toward the door. "If he finds me here, if he causes trouble for you, I couldn't. I won't let him." "Elena." Morpheus caught her arm, carefully, telegraphing the movement so she could pull away if she wanted. She didn't. "He's not getting in. The wards won't allow it. But this does accelerate our timeline." He released her, moving back to the scrying pool. "I need you to do something. It will be difficult, but it's important." "Anything," Elena said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Use the pool to read his intentions, not his surface thoughts, his deep purpose, what he really wants, beyond just retrieving you. Wraiths don't come cheap. He's invested significant resources in this search." Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to run from anything that involved getting closer to Marcus, even metaphorically. But Morpheus was looking at her with something like faith, like he believed she could do this impossible thing. She turned back to the water, forcing herself to focus. At first, she saw nothing but her own reflection, bruised and frightened. Then the water rippled, and Marcus's face appeared. She nearly pulled away, but Morpheus's presence behind her, solid and reassuring, kept her grounded. She looked deeper, past Marcus's rage, past his wounded pride at being defied, and there, underneath everything, she found it. Fear. Marcus was terrified, not of losing Elena, of losing what she represented. She saw flashes of debts, of promises made to dangerous people, of a life built on lies and money he didn't have. She saw Elena as collateral, as proof of stability, as the respectable wife who made him look legitimate. Without her, His carefully constructed facade crumbled. He owes people money, Elena breathed. A lot of money. To the kind of people who don't accept excuses. I was. I was his proof that he was settled, trustworthy. Without me, they'll come collecting. He's desperate. Morpheus made a satisfied sound. Good. Desperate men make mistakes. And now we know this isn't about love or possession. Not really. It's about fear. We can use that. Elena pulled away from the pool, her head pounding. How? He's still out there with things that want to hurt people on his behalf. Let me worry about the wraiths, Morpheus said. I've been dispersing their kind for centuries. They're a nuisance, nothing more. He studied Elena with those ancient eyes. But you just accessed a scrying pool that should only respond to supernatural beings. You read intent from a distance. Elena, do you understand what that means? She shook her head, exhausted suddenly, the brief surge of power leaving her drained. It means you're not just sensitive to our world. You're part of it. At least partially. Somewhere in your bloodline there's magic. Old magic. The kind that skips generations but never truly dies. Morpheus guided her to a bench beneath the windows. Rest. Using the pool takes energy until you learn to channel it properly. Elena sat, processing. Magic. Her. It was absurd, except she'd just done something impossible, and a vampire was sitting beside her discussing it like it was perfectly normal. If I have magic, she said slowly, why didn't it protect me? Why couldn't I escape Marcus before now? Magic isn't a shield, Morpheus replied. It's a tool, and like any tool, it's useless if you don't know you have it. Don't know how to wield it. Your gift likely tried to warn you about Marcus, tried to show you his true nature. But you were young when you married, yes? Not yet trained to recognize what you were feeling? Elena thought back to their courtship. There had been moments when something felt off, when the air around Marcus seemed to shimmer strangely. She dismissed it as nervousness, as excitement, as anything but what it actually was. Her instincts screaming danger. I was 21, she whispered. I thought he was charming, attentive. By the time I realized what he really was, I was already trapped. But you're not trapped anymore, Morpheus said. You're here. You're safe. And now you know what you can become. He stood, offering his hand. Come. Your husband and his hired spirits can wait at the gates until they rot, for all I care. Let them rage against wards that have stood for 3 centuries. Meanwhile, you need food, rest, and time to let your gift settle. The days that followed took on a strange rhythm. Morpheus taught Elena about the supernatural world from the safety of his castle, showing her books written in languages she didn't speak, but somehow understood when she touched the pages. He explained that her gift wasn't just sensing, it was understanding. The magic in her blood recognized magic in other forms, translated it, made it accessible. Marcus remained at the gates, his wraiths circling the perimeter like vultures. Elena could feel him there, his desperation growing sharper each day. The people he owed were looking for him, she sensed, and each day without her to prove his stability made his situation more dire. He'll give up eventually, Morpheus said one evening as they sat in the library. He was teaching her about different supernatural species, showing her how to distinguish between vampires, fae, shifters, and things without names in human languages. Once he realizes the cost outweighs the benefit. You don't know Marcus, Alana replied, running her fingers over an ancient text about wards. The symbols glowed faintly at her touch, responding to the magic she was learning to acknowledge. He doesn't think in terms of cost-benefit. He thinks in terms of ownership. I'm his wife. In his mind, that means I'm his property forever. Morpheus's expression darkened. Then we'll need to make him understand otherwise, publicly, legally, in ways he can't dispute. He closed the book he'd been reading. Elena, there's something I need to ask you. It's not a small thing, and you're free to refuse. What is it? In the supernatural world, we have laws, councils, ways of handling disputes. If you were to make a formal claim of sanctuary under my protection, Marcus couldn't touch you. The council would recognize your right to separate from him, would enforce it with methods human courts can't match. He paused, but it requires you to acknowledge publicly what happened, to testify before beings who will see every truth you speak. It's not gentle. It's not easy. But it's permanent. Elena's hands trembled. The thought of speaking about the abuse out loud, to strangers, to powerful beings who might judge her for staying as long as she did. Would you be there? Every moment, Morpheus promised. I would stand as your sponsor, your advocate. No one would question you without going through me first. She thought about it while the candles burned lower. About 7 years of silence, of hiding bruises, of making excuses, about how that silence had nearly killed her. When? She asked. The next council meeting is in 3 days, Morpheus said. It's held at the neutral grounds, a place between our world and yours. You'll be safe there, protected by ancient laws even I don't dare break. 3 days. Elena spent them learning, growing stronger. Morpheus taught her to ground herself, to channel the magic that wanted to burst out of her in uncontrolled waves. He showed her how to sense danger, not just from supernatural beings, but from humans with ill intent. How to read the shape of someone's aura and know their truth. She practiced with the scrying pool until she could call up images without the draining headache. She learned to sense Morpheus anywhere in the castle, could feel the unique signature of his presence like a beacon. And she learned other things too, like how Morpheus took his coffee black and scalding, hot enough to burn a human's throat. Like how he had a collection of music boxes from every century since their invention, each one playing a melody from a different time in his life. Like how he sat with her in the evenings, reading aloud from books she'd never heard of, his voice turning poetry into something sacred. Why are you doing all this? Elena asked on the second night. They were in the library again, her favorite room in the castle. Teaching me, protecting me. You could have just caught me and sent me to a shelter. Why invest this much time in a stranger? Morpheus was quiet for a long moment, the firelight casting shadows across his ageless face. 900 years, he finally said. I've walked this earth for 900 years, Elena. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched humanity invent printing presses and airplanes and ways to split atoms. I've witnessed miracles and atrocities in equal measure. He set down his book. But in all that time, I've rarely seen true courage. Real bravery isn't facing down an enemy in battle. It's standing at a window in the dark, broken and terrified, and choosing to jump anyway. Choosing the unknown over certain suffering. That's courage, and it's rare enough to be worth protecting. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I didn't feel courageous. I felt like a coward. Cowards don't jump, Morpheus said simply. They stay. They accept. They believe the lies they're told about deserving the pain. You jumped. That makes you remarkable. On the third day, Elena stood before her closet, staring at the dresses Morpheus had provided. He'd sent for a seamstress, who'd taken one look at Elena's bruises and worked in tight-lipped silence, creating clothes that fit perfectly while hiding the worst of the marks. For the council, Elena chose deep midnight blue, the color of Morpheus's eyes. The dress was simple but elegant, making her look older, stronger, more like someone who could face down immortal beings and tell them about her own private hell. Morpheus met her in the entrance hall, and his expression when he saw her made her breath catch. You look like royalty, he said. I feel like I'm going to vomit, Elena replied honestly. He smiled, something warm and real. Fear and courage often feel identical. The difference is what you do with the feeling. The neutral grounds existed in a place between places. Morpheus transported them there with casual ease, and Elena found herself in a massive amphitheater carved from what looked like crystal and shadow. Beings filled the seats, some humanoid, some decidedly not. She felt their attention land on her like physical weight. At the center sat three figures on elevated thrones. An ancient vampire with eyes like chips of ice, a fey woman who glowed with barely contained power, and something else, something Elena's gift couldn't quite categorize, wrapped in smoke and starlight. The council chamber hummed with power that made Elena's teeth ache. Morpheus stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the cold emanating from him, a reminder that despite his gentleness with her, he was fundamentally other. Dangerous. The being of smoke and starlight spoke first, its voice resonating like bells and thunder combined. Morpheus Nightfall, you bring a human before this council. State your purpose. Morpheus's voice carried through the chamber with absolute authority. I bring Elena Thorne, who claims sanctuary under my protection as is her right. She seeks dissolution of her human marriage bond and protection from the one who would do her harm. The ice-eyed vampire leaned forward. Human marriages fall under human jurisdiction. Why should we involve ourselves in mortal affairs? Because the mortal in question has employed supernatural means to reclaim her, Morpheus replied. He's bound wraiths to his service, used them to breach the peace of our world. That makes this our affair. Murmurs rippled through the assembled beings. The Fey woman's luminous eyes fixed on Elena, and she felt exposed, like every secret she'd ever kept was being read from her skin. Let the humans speak, the Fey said, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. Tell us why you fled your mate, child, and know that lies burn in this place. Only truth can be spoken here. Elena's mouth went dry. Morpheus touched her elbow lightly, a brief reminder that she wasn't alone. She stepped forward. I fled because he was killing me, she said, and her voice didn't shake. Not quickly, slowly. With fists and words in isolation. 7 years of being told I was worthless, being shown I was property. 7 years of bruises and broken bones and broken spirit. The Fey's eyes narrowed. Why did you not leave sooner? It was the question Elena had asked herself 1,000 times. Because he made me believe I couldn't. Because he controlled everything. The money, the apartment, my ability to leave. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was as worthless as he said. Her voice grew stronger. Because leaving an abuser isn't simple. It's not a door you walk through. It's a window you have to jump from in the middle of the night, hoping someone catches you before you hit the ground. The being of smoke shifted. And Morpheus caught you. Yes. Why? The ice-eyed vampire asked, directing the question to Morpheus. Why intervene in human affairs? You've avoided such entanglements for decades. Because I heard her fall, Morpheus said quietly. And I've lived long enough to know that some things are worth catching. He paused. Also, she possesses a gift. Supernatural sensitivity. She can sense our kind, read intentions, access magic that should be beyond human reach. She's valuable to our world, not just to me. Interest sparked in the Fey woman's expression. Show us. Elena didn't know what to show them, but Morpheus had taught her to trust her instincts. She closed her eyes and let her gift expand, feeling outward into the chamber. The assembled beings lit up in her mind's eye like constellations, each one a unique signature of power and purpose. The ice-eyed vampire was exactly what he appeared to be, ancient and cold and driven by logic over emotion. The Fey woman was wild magic barely contained, chaotic, but not malicious, and the smoke being. You're not one thing, Elena said, opening her eyes to look at it. You're 3 consciousnesses sharing one form. Sisters, I think. Or the concept of sisterhood translated into whatever you are. Silence fell. Then the smoke being laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. She sees true. Few have discerned our nature so quickly. It shifted, resolving into three distinct figures before blending back into one. The girl has the sight. Ancient sight, the kind our ancestors valued. This changes matters. Indeed, the Fey woman agreed. She looked at Elena with something like respect. A human with true sight is rare. A human with true sight who escapes an abuser demonstrates remarkable strength. We will hear your claim, Elena Thorne. What followed was brutal. The council asked questions that cut to bone, made her recount incidents she'd tried to forget, speak aloud things she'd only whispered to herself in the darkest hours. They asked why she'd married him, why she'd stayed, whether she'd fought back, whether she'd provoked him. Each question felt like a small death, but Elena answered them all. The truth burned, coming out, but it also burned clean, cauterizing wounds that had festered for 7 years. Morpheus stood beside her throughout, his presence a solid anchor. When the questions turned particularly cruel, when the ice-eyed vampire asked whether she'd considered that perhaps she'd been insufficiently submissive, Morpheus's growl reverberated through the chamber. "Careful, Cassius," he said softly. "Remember who you're questioning and who stands as her sponsor." Cassius leaned back, but his expression remained skeptical. "I merely seek to understand the human perspective. In our world, such issues are handled differently. In our world, the Fey woman cut in. Consent matters. Choice matters. This human chose to flee rather than endure. That choice deserves respect, regardless of whether she fought back in ways you consider appropriate." She stood, her glow intensifying. "I've heard enough. Elena Thorne, you claim sanctuary. As representative of the Fey courts, I recognize your claim. The Shifter clans concur, called a voice from the assembly. The Wraith Wardens support sanctuary, echoed another. One by one, voices rose in agreement until even Cassius nodded grudgingly, the smoke being spoke last. Then, it is decided. Elena Thorne is granted sanctuary under the protection of Morpheus Nightfall. Her human marriage is dissolved by our authority. Any who seek to reclaim her by force will answer to this council. Relief flooded through Elena so intensely she swayed. Morpheus steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "There is one more matter," Morpheus said. "The human, Marcus Thorne, waits at my gates with bound wraiths. He must be dealt with. Bring him before us, the smoke being commanded. Let him face the consequences of his trespass into our world." Marcus Thorne appeared in the council chamber, surrounded by guards, magical restraints binding his wrists. He looked different than Elena remembered. Smaller somehow, diminished. The man who'd loomed so large in her life for 7 years was just a man. Average height, thinning hair, unremarkable features twisted by rage and fear. His eyes found Elena, and the hatred in them made her flinch before she could stop herself. But Morpheus shifted slightly, placing himself between her and Marcus's line of sight. "Steady," he murmured. "He has no power here." The ice-eyed vampire, Cassius, spoke. "Marcus Thorne, you stand accused of binding wraiths to your service without license, of using them to threaten a supernatural residence, and of refusing to accept a council-sanctioned sanctuary claim. How do you answer?" "That's my wife," Marcus spat, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "She belongs to me. I don't care what your freak council says. She's mine. We're married under human law, and I want her back." "The marriage is dissolved," the Fey woman said calmly, "by our authority, which supersedes human legal structures when supernatural elements are involved. You employed wraiths. That made this our jurisdiction." "I don't recognize your authority," Marcus snarled. "I don't care about your rules or your laws. Elena is coming home with me. And if I have to burn down that entire castle to get her, I will. Elena felt Morpheus tense beside her, felt the temperature in the chamber drop several degrees. But it was the smoke being who spoke, their three voices layered into one terrifying harmony. You threaten destruction of supernatural property. You reject the council's authority. You claim ownership of a being who has freely chosen to leave you. Tell us, mortal, do you understand the danger you're in? Marcus laughed, wild and unhinged. Danger? From what? A bunch of costumed freaks playing pretend? I've seen what you are. Monsters. Demons. And my wife is sick, clearly, if she's chosen you over me. She needs help. Medical help. I'm her husband. I have rights. You have nothing, Morpheus said, his voice colder than Elena had ever heard it. You forfeited every right when you laid hands on her in anger, when you made her fear for her life, when you turned love into torture. Love? Marcus's voice rose to a shout. I gave her everything, a home, a life, stability. I tolerated her uselessness, her stupidity, her constant disappointments. Do you know how many times I had to correct her? How many times she made me. He stopped, realizing what he was admitting. The council members exchanged looks. The Fey woman's glow had turned harsh, sharp-edged. Made you hurt her? She asked softly. Is that what you were about to say? She needed discipline, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its certainty. She needed to learn, to obey, to be a proper wife. I needed to be safe, Elena said, and her voice cut through the chamber like a blade. I needed to sleep without wondering if you'd wake me with your fists. I needed to exist without apologizing for breathing. I needed to be human, not property. Marcus turned to her, and for a moment she saw something flicker across his face. Not remorse, never that. But recognition, perhaps, of how thoroughly he'd lost. You'll regret this, he said. Without me, you're nothing. No one will want you. No one will protect you. You'll come crawling back, and when you do, I won't be so forgiving. I'd rather die, Elena said simply. I'd rather jump from 100 windows than spend one more second in your presence. You taught me that. When jumping seemed preferable to staying, you taught me exactly what you were worth, the smoke being raised what might have been a hand. Enough, Marcus Thorne, for your crimes against the peace of our world, for your use of forbidden bindings, and for your threats against council members, you are hereby marked. A symbol appeared on Marcus's forehead, glowing with sickly green light. He clawed at it, but it wouldn't come off, branding itself into his skin. What is this? What did you do to me? We marked you, Cassius explained with cold satisfaction. Now every supernatural being will know what you are. A human who broke our laws, who abused one with the gift, who threatened violence against our kind. You'll find doors closed to you in places you didn't know existed. Opportunities vanished. Protection withdrawn. The Fey woman added, the mark also ensures your intent toward Elena. Should you approach within a mile of her, should you speak her name with harmful intent, should you seek revenge in any form, we will know. And we will respond. Permanently. Marcus's face had gone white. You can't do this. I have rights. I'll go to the police, the media. You'll do nothing, the smoke being said. Because if you speak of what happened here, if you reveal our world to those who shouldn't know, the mark will activate. It will burn through your mind, leaving you unable to form coherent thoughts about any of this. A protection for our secrecy, and a punishment for your arrogance. They gestured, and the guards began dragging Marcus away. He fought them, screaming obscenities, threats, promises of revenge. But his voice faded as they removed him from the chamber, leaving only echoes behind. Elena stood very still, processing. It was over. Actually over. Marcus couldn't hurt her anymore, couldn't find her, couldn't drag her back into hell. "Thank you," she whispered to the council, "for listening, for believing me, for this." The Fey woman descended from her throne, approaching Elena with surprising gentleness. "Thank you, child, for having the courage to speak. Too many suffer in silence. Your voice today may encourage others to find theirs." She placed a cool hand on Elena's cheek. "You carry old magic in your blood. Develop it. Let it make you strong." The smoke being added. "You're welcome in our world, Elena Thorne. Few humans ever receive that invitation. Use it wisely." Morpheus transported them back to the castle as the last light faded from the sky. Elena felt hollowed out, exhausted in ways that went deeper than physical tiredness. She testified, faced Marcus, watched him be dragged away marked and powerless. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt strange, like waking from a nightmare, only to realize you'd been dreaming for years and had forgotten what reality looked like. "Come," Morpheus said gently. "You need rest." But Elena shook her head. I don't know what I need. To move. To think." To remember how to exist, without fear. They ended up on the same balcony where she'd arrived that first night, looking out over forests painted silver by moonlight. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of night, blooming flowers. "How long until I stop waiting for him to appear?" Elena asked. "How long until I stop flinching at loud noises and looking over my shoulder?" "I don't know," Morpheus admitted. "Trauma doesn't follow a schedule. It heals in its own time, at its own pace. But you will heal, Elena. I've watched centuries of humans survive impossible things. You're stronger than you know." "I jumped from a window because I was too weak to leave any other way," Elena said. "That's not strength. You jumped from a window because you finally valued your life more than you feared his anger. That's the definition of strength." Morpheus turned to face her. "I've lived 900 years. I've known warriors who never showed the courage you demonstrated. Don't diminish what you survived." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "What happens now? I can't stay in your castle forever. Eventually, I need to figure out how to live. Really live. Build something that's mine." "What do you want to build?" Morpheus asked. The question stopped her. What did she want? For 7 years, wanting anything had been dangerous. Marcus had taught her that desires were weaknesses to be exploited, that dreams were foolish, that the only acceptable ambition was making him happy. "I don't know," she admitted. "I used to paint. Before Marcus. He said it was a waste of time and money. Threw away my supplies during one of his rages. But I loved it. The way colors could capture feelings words couldn't reach." "Then paint again," Morpheus said simply. "I have art supplies, probably covered in decades of dust somewhere in the castle. Or I can acquire new ones. Paint. Create. Remember what it felt like to want something for yourself. The idea felt revolutionary and terrifying. I wouldn't know where to start. Start with how you feel right now, this moment. This triumph over the man who tried to break you." Morpheus's expression softened. "I'd like to see what you create, if you're willing to share it." Over the following weeks, Elena painted. Morpheus had indeed located art supplies, and supplemented them with trips to the city for canvases and paints and colors Elena had only dreamed of affording before. She painted in the library, in the gardens, wherever light and inspiration struck. The first paintings were dark, visceral, shadows and storms and windows with nothing below them but void. She painted bruises in abstract, made them almost beautiful in their terrible honesty. Morpheus never commented on the darkness, just ensured she had space and supplies and time. But gradually, the paintings began to change. Light crept in at the edges. Colors brightened. She painted Morpheus reading by firelight, caught the agelessness in his features, the gentleness in his hands as he turned pages. She painted the castle at dawn, all soaring towers and possibility. She painted the council chamber, the beings who'd believed her when speaking her truth. "You're incredibly talented," Morpheus said one evening, studying her latest work. It showed a woman made of glass, cracked but not broken, with light shining through the fractures. "Have you ever sold your work?" "Marcus never let me try," Elena said. "Said no one would buy paintings from a nobody. Marcus was wrong about everything," Morpheus replied. "I know gallery owners in the city. Beings who appreciate art created by those with the gift. Your work carries power, Elena. Others would feel it, respond to it." The idea of showing her work publicly made Elena's stomach clench with anxiety, but it also sparked something that felt dangerously like hope. "I'm not ready for that yet," she said. "But maybe someday. Maybe when I've painted enough light to balance the darkness." "Whenever you're ready," Morpheus assured her. "There's no rush. You have time." Time. She had time. The realization hit her with surprising force. She could spend months painting if she wanted. Years. She could make mistakes, create ugly things, experiment wildly. No one would punish her for wasting time or supplies. No one would tell her she was being selfish or foolish. "Morpheus," she said suddenly, "why are you doing all this? And don't say it's because I have the gift, or because you happened to catch me falling. Tell me the real reason." He was quiet for a long time, looking out over the forest beyond the windows. When he spoke, his voice carried centuries of weariness. "Because I'm tired of watching humans suffer needlessly. Tired of cruelty being mistaken for strength, of abuse being hidden behind closed doors. I've seen empires built on blood. I've participated in wars where honor meant glory and death. But individual suffering, the kind that happens in private, to people who can't fight back? That's the worst kind of evil, the insidious kind that everyone ignores." He turned to her. "When I caught you, I felt your pain like it was my own. Vampire senses, they don't just detect physical distress. We feel emotion, desperation, the shape of someone's suffering. Yours cut through me like a blade. And I thought, here's someone who values her life so little she'd rather die than continue living in pain. How could I not help? How could anyone not help?" "Most people didn't," Elena said quietly. "I told friends, family, showed them bruises. They said marriage was hard work, that I needed to be more understanding, that he was under stress. No one helped." "Then they failed you," Morpheus said simply. "And I'm sorry for that. But you're here now. You're safe. And you're learning that you're worth saving." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I still don't feel worth it sometimes. Don't feel like I deserve this castle, this safety, your protection. I feel like I'm taking advantage of your kindness." "You're not taking anything I'm not freely giving," Morpheus said. "And your worthiness isn't determined by how you feel about yourself. It's inherent. You exist, therefore you matter. Your suffering was real. Therefore, you deserved rescue. It's that simple." 6 months after the council hearing, Elena stood in a gallery in the city's supernatural district, a place that existed in the spaces between human awareness. Her paintings hung on walls that shimmered with embedded magic, each piece protected by wards that would prevent theft and damage. Morpheus stood beside her, looking impossibly elegant in dark, formal wear. Around them, beings from across the supernatural spectrum examined her work with expressions, ranging from curious to moved to deeply affected. "This one," a Fey woman said, stopping before Elena's painting of the glass woman. "I feel this. The breaking and the light. It speaks to something true." "Thank you," Elena managed, still getting used to accepting compliments without deflecting or minimizing. The gallery owner, a vampire nearly as old as Morpheus, approached with a satisfied expression. 3 pieces sold already, and the night's barely begun. I told you your work would resonate. Elena could barely process it. People wanted her paintings, were paying substantial amounts for them, money that would be hers, not controlled by anyone else. Independence, real independence, taking shape in front of her eyes. Proud of you, Morpheus murmured, quiet enough that only her enhanced hearing caught it. She'd been developing her gift, learning to use it deliberately, rather than just passively sensing. Now she could hear whispered conversations across the gallery, could feel the emotional resonance of viewers connecting with her art. A young woman approached, human from what Elena could sense, though she carried a trace of magic that suggested Fey ancestry. Excuse me, are you the artist? Elena nodded, still not quite comfortable claiming the title. I just wanted to say, this piece. The woman gestured to a painting Elena had titled, Before Dawn. It showed a window, dark outside, but the faintest hint of light touching the horizon. It made me cry. In a good way. I was in a situation similar to what I think you're depicting, and I got out 3 months ago. Seeing this, knowing someone else understands, it helps. It really helps. Elena felt her throat tighten. I'm glad, she said softly. I'm glad you got out, and I'm glad the painting speaks to you. They talked for a while, 2 survivors recognizing each other across the distance trauma creates. When the woman finally moved on, Elena felt something settle in her chest. This was why she painted. Not for money or recognition, but for this. For connection. For showing others they weren't alone in their suffering or their survival. The evening progressed in a blur of conversations and sales. By the time the gallery began to close, Elena's entire collection had sold, except for 1 piece. The painting of Morpheus reading, which she'd marked as not for sale. She needed to keep that one. A reminder of safety, of the being who'd caught her fall and taught her how to live again. Morpheus transported them back to the castle as midnight approached. Elena was exhausted, but exhilarated, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. You did beautifully, Morpheus said as they stood in the entrance hall. Spoke with buyers, accepted compliments, owned your talent. I'm impressed. I couldn't have done it without you, Elena replied. Without all this. The safety, the time to heal, the encouragement. You could have, Morpheus corrected gently. It would have been harder, taken longer, but you'd have found your way eventually. The strength was always yours. I just provided the space for it to emerge. Elena looked at him, this impossible being who'd become her closest friend, her protector, her anchor in a world that had revealed itself to be far stranger and more magical than she'd ever imagined. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why do you live alone? You said your court disbanded, but surely in 900 years you could have built something new. Found companions, friends, family. Why the solitude? Morpheus's expression shifted, becoming something Elena had rarely seen on him. Vulnerability. Because caring about people, truly caring, means watching them leave. Humans age and die. Other vampires pursue their own ambitions and drift away. The Fae are too chaotic for sustained companionship. After enough centuries of attachment and loss, solitude seemed safer, less painful. Lonely, though, Elena said quietly. Yes, he admitted. Profoundly lonely. But loneliness I could control. Loss I couldn't. Elena understood that calculation, the decision to close yourself off rather than risk more pain. She'd almost made the same choice, had nearly let Marcus's abuse convince her that she was better off alone, that no one would want her damaged self. But she'd jumped. And been caught. And learned that connection was worth the risk. I'm glad you caught me, she said. Not just because you saved my life, but because you let me into yours. Let me matter to you. That's a gift, maybe as valuable as the one you gave me. Morpheus looked at her with those ancient eyes, and Elena saw something she'd never quite noticed before. Not just kindness or protection, but something deeper. Care. Real, genuine care that went beyond obligation or duty. "You do matter," he said softly. "More than I expected. More than I thought possible after so long alone. You've reminded me what it feels like to have someone in my space, in my life, who makes the silence less empty." Elena stepped closer, emboldened by the honesty in his words. "Then don't send me away. I know eventually I need to figure out independence, find my own place, but maybe not yet? Maybe we could both benefit from a little less loneliness?" "You're always welcome here," Morpheus said, "for as long as you want to stay. This castle has been empty for too long. Your presence fills it with something I didn't know I missed. Life. Warmth. The sound of heartbeats and laughter, and someone singing off-key while they paint." Elena laughed. "I do not sing off-key." "You absolutely do," Morpheus replied, smiling. "It's charming." They stood there in the entrance hall, vampire and human, centuries and months, two beings who'd found unexpected companionship in each other's solitude. Outside, dawn was approaching, the sky lightening from black to deep blue. "Thank you," Elena said again. "For catching me. For keeping me. For showing me what safety feels like." "Thank you," Morpheus replied, "for reminding me what it feels like to hope." 1 year after the jump that changed everything, Elena stood in the castle's courtyard teaching a class. 7 women, all human, all survivors of situations similar to hers, sat in a circle, learning to access their own latent magical gifts. Not all humans had the sensitivity Elena possessed, but Morpheus had discovered that trauma sometimes awakened dormant abilities. These women had all felt something different about him when he'd helped establish this program, had sensed the truth beneath his human disguise. "Close your eyes," Elena instructed, her voice steady and sure in a way it hadn't been a year ago. "Feel outward. Not with your physical senses, but with the part of you that knows when someone's watching you from behind. That feels the difference between an empty room and one with a presence. That's your gift. That's your power." She watched as the women practiced, some struggling, some finding it easily. This was her purpose now, she'd realized. Not just creating art, though she still painted, but helping others discover they had strength they'd never known existed. That abuse hadn't broken them, had instead cracked them open to reveal magic underneath. Morpheus observed from the colonnade, as he often did. He never interfered with her teaching, but his presence provided security for the women who were still learning to trust. A vampire who could kill them easily, but chose instead to protect, to support, to believe in their potential. After class, when the women had been transported back to their homes by trusted members of Morpheus's network, Elena found him in the library. He was reading, as always, but set the book aside when she entered. "You're a natural teacher," he said. "They listen to you because you've walked the path they're on. You understand in ways I never could." "It helps," Elena agreed, settling into her favorite chair across from his. "But you help too. Seeing a being as powerful as you treating them with respect, believing they're worth protecting, it shifts something in how they see themselves." They'd fallen into comfortable patterns over the year. Evenings in the library, mornings painting while Morpheus handled his affairs, afternoons teaching or exploring the supernatural world that had opened up to her. It felt like partnership, like found family, like something Elena had never experienced before. Safe companionship built on mutual respect rather than control. "I've been thinking," Morpheus said carefully, "about the future. Specifically about what happens when you're ready to leave." Elena's heart clenched. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No," he said quickly. "Never. But Elena, you're young, human. Eventually you'll want a life beyond these walls. A partner, perhaps. Children. Experiences I can't provide. I don't want my protection to become another cage, even a gilded one. Elena was quiet, considering. A year ago, the thought of leaving the castle would have terrified her. Now she knew she could survive on her own. The question was whether she wanted to. What if I don't want those things? She asked. What if what I want is this? Teaching, painting, learning magic, building something meaningful with someone who sees me as an equal rather than property or a burden or a prize? Morpheus met her eyes. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying I'm happy here, not because I'm hiding or running, but because this is where I want to be. You've become my family, Morpheus, my friend, my home. She paused. Unless you want me to leave? If my presence has become tiresome, or... Never tiresome, Morpheus interrupted. You've brought more life to this place in a year than I've experienced in a century, but I worry about stealing your future. You're 29, you should be living, exploring, finding your place in the world. I am finding my place, Elena said. Here. With you. Teaching women who need to learn they're stronger than they know. Creating art that helps others process their pain. Developing magic I didn't know existed. This is my life, Morpheus. The one I'm choosing. Not the one chosen for me. She leaned forward. You caught me when I fell, but you also taught me how to fly. Don't you see? I'm not staying because I'm afraid to leave. I'm staying because leaving would mean abandoning something precious. This partnership we've built, this purpose I've found, this version of myself I like being. Morpheus's expression was complex, layered with emotions his ageless face struggled to contain. You're certain? Because humans change. What you want now might not be what you want in 5 years, 10 years. Nothing is certain, Elena agreed. But I'm as certain about this as I've ever been about anything. I want to stay. I want to build this program, help more women, learn everything you can teach me about magic and the supernatural world. And I want to do it here, with you, for as long as you'll have me. As long as I'll have you? Morpheus almost smiled. Elena, I'm the one who should be asking if you'll tolerate my presence. 900 years of accumulated peculiarities and stubbornness. I like your peculiarities, Elena said. The way you organize books by the emotional resonance of their contents, rather than author or title. How you make coffee strong enough to wake the dead, even though you can't drink it. The collection of music boxes you wind up when you're thinking. All of it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling, the weight of decisions made, and futures chosen settling around them. Then stay, Morpheus said finally. Build your program. Teach. Paint. Make this castle a refuge for those who need one, and let me be part of it. Part of something that matters. Deal, Elena said, smiling. They shook hands, a formal gesture for an informal understanding. But when Morpheus's cool hand wrapped around hers, Elena felt the magic spark between them, his ancient power recognizing her developing gift. Two beings from different worlds, building something new together. That night, Elena painted one more piece. Not for the gallery, not for sale. For herself. It showed a window, open to starlight, and a figure floating rather than falling. Arms outstretched, not in terror, but in flight. Free.